Okay, we've talked about different market types, we've talked about market sizing, we've talked about physical and virtual markets. Can't leave this topic without talking about B2C and B2B markets. They're different and they affect your business model. And so it's worth having a few words about them as well. What are B2C and B2B? Well, B2C is business to consumer. It's selling something to individuals, to consumers, to households, to users, to families, to children, to seniors, some group who's it's an individual that you're selling to. And the archetype is an individual defined by their demographics, so seniors or soccer moms, or their psychographics, strivers, millennials, that kind of thing. B2B sale is a fundamentally different kind of sale. A B2B sale is where you're selling to a business, and the business makes a decision differently than a consumer makes a decision. And the archetype here is going to be some role within the company. So there's going to be the buyer or the line of business manager or the IT staff or the marketing head. It's someone typically defined by their job title or their function rather than by their demographics or their psychographics. Although, of course, the individuals who are buying are individuals and consumers as well, and you have to take that into account. When you sell to small businesses, it's sometimes called SMB sales, and if you sell to medium businesses, it's sometimes called SME sales, and large business sales are usually called enterprise sales, but these are B2B sales. The thing about a B2C market is that consumers are fundamentally, they really, at least in the developed world, don't have many real needs. There are very few burning needs that consumers have. And they've got many choices for everything. So the central B2C problem, if you will, is delighting them. The central problem is finding a consumer and offering to them something that's so compelling, so fascinating, so interesting that they have to have it. It's exciting demand that doesn't exist in some sense, but it's uncovering a need and making something that's so appealing that they've got to have it. One of the main tools in B2C success, not surprisingly, is advertising. If you can use advertising to induce a feeling in people, to give them an attitude towards something that you're trying to sell, or to give them a feeling that a need of theirs is more important than they had thought it was, and there's only one way to satisfy it, then that's a sort of road to success for you. If you think of two masters of B2C selling, I'd have to pick Procter & Gamble as a historical, sort of legacy one, whose attention to product brand and name and advertising and marketing and focus groups and generally figuring out in detail how to delight the consumer is sort of legendary. And they continue to do well. And then a kind of newcomer would have to be someone like Apple. Steve Jobs' vision was that everyone on earth should be delighted by one of his gadgets, hopefully by more than one of his gadgets. And he did a great job at it. He was a master. He built very, very appealing gadgets in category after category that people simply had to have. That's a B2C. B2B markets are a little bit different. First of all, enterprises have lots of stakeholders. So there's no one locus of decision. There's no one person that makes up their mind to buy something, typically. And there's no clean way they even have to decide things. Often they'll have a decision-making process, but that's not the real process that they use. There's stakeholders, there's influencers, there's recommenders, there's all these roles we're going to talk about in a subsequent lecture. And they all have to unite in some way that's not put down on paper before the decision will be made. And finally, organizations tend to be quite conservative about change. We've got something, it works pretty good for us. Why don't you come back in a couple months and we'll see if we have a need. So the easiest thing for an enterprise to do is not to change at all. And often what defeats a sale to an enterprise or to a B2B customer more generally is inertia, is just doing what they do now. So the central B2B problem is turning the battleship. It's getting this big organization to make up its mind to either move in a different direction if you're trying to sell them something new, or keep going straight if you're trying to sell them something you're already selling them. And persuading a complex, anarchic organization to do what you want is sort of the central B2B problem. Advertising doesn't work so well in this area. It's certainly been tried. There's certainly enough advertising that goes on. But the real tools of B2B success are probably FUD, which stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and account control. So take advantage of the inertia of an organization by saying, well, you can keep on with that, but some catastrophic things could happen if you do. That's FUD. You're trying to incite some fear or uncertainty or doubt in the mind of the prospect you're selling to. The other is account control. We already sell you 90% of your equipment. Why shouldn't you buy the remaining 10% from us? Maybe our solution's not as good as those upstarts who are trying to sell you something new, but we're taking care of all your needs. And by the way, we can give you a little something on price if you buy from us. Masters of B2B. Oracle is probably a master of B2B. Oracle sells database software, enterprise applications, and increasingly sort of vertical industry applications to big businesses. They are masters of account control. In fact, some people think they're sadistic in their account control. They understand how to keep customers in the herd and not let them stray away, and they do a very good job of it. Another good example is probably my alma mater, PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Big systems integrator, big consulting firm, big accountant firm. We understand very well how to continue to offer new things to our existing customers in a way that keeps them customers. We're masters of account control. Two good companies to sort of watch in B2B. It's also worth noting that there are hybrid forms. B2B2C is a very common one, where you're selling something to a business, but the business is going to use it to sell to consumers. So you're selling a platform or a capability, and in order to do a good job of this, you probably have to understand the end consumer that those people are trying to sell to. So if you're trying to sell some software that makes it easier to sell automobiles, and you're trying to sell it to automobile dealerships, you better understand how automobile buyers think, or you're not going to do a good job of selling the platform to the dealership. You need to understand it's like a multi-sided market, which is another issue we'll talk about. And another one is probably B2E, which is business to employee. And that's where you're selling to a business some tool or service or platform that's going to be used internally by their own people. This was a pretty staid business until a few years ago, because people pretty much had to take what you gave them. And some of the tools that people had to use in businesses were pretty crummy, frankly. A couple years ago, that started changing because people started bringing iPads into business and said, I want to use my iPad. iPad has a great app for this. And all of a sudden, the businesses had to cope with a thing they call consumerization of IT. And B2E sort of became a real interesting area in its own right, sort of a variant of B2C. But it's still an area that's in growth and definition. So the main points here are probably that B2C and B2B markets are quite different business models and imply very different things. In B2C, you want to tempt a customer with wants rather than needs for the most part, and you want to get, keep, and expand. Keeping your customers once you've won them is pretty important. In B2B, it's how to move a customer along through a complex sales or decision cycle and how to demonstrate value, because B2B decisions tend to be more rational, more value-oriented, therefore more slow and complex. Thank you.